third key point for this worldview, this cosmic humanist new spiritual worldview, is this. Life is about the search for higher consciousness. In other words, you know you're becoming enlightened in this worldview if you begin to give up the idea that you actually should think things through, that you should apply logic to the situations in your life, that you should have a reasonable reason for why you would do something. You give that up and begin to search for something else, some reality that goes beyond those resources that all of your life you have been taught will help you be led to truth. Well, what are these resources? What would this actually look like? It's a little bit hard to tell from some of the writings in this field, but one of the key terms you'll hear over and over again is this term higher consciousness. Higher consciousness. That we're conscious of our own existence, but if we're really meditating well, like Eckhart Tolle said, we should be conscious of a higher existence, of something that is higher. This higher consciousness is in fact this God, this oneness of all things that actually exists. There's an interesting book on the market called War of the Worldviews that actually compares the new spiritualist worldview to an atheist materialist worldview. I thought it was really an interesting premise for a book. On the one side, Leonard Mladenov was defending materialism. Leonard Mladenov, you may have seen that name before if you've read the recent book by Stephen Hawking. Leonard Mladenov is the co-author of that book, and Stephen Hawking, of course, is one of the most brilliant physicists of our time. But he went away from physics into philosophy and religion and tried to write a book. And really began to demonstrate that sometimes people who are really super smart about science really they're not that great at philosophy and at religion. But Leonard Mladenov helped Stephen Hawking write that book, and he's a smart, funny, really incisive writer. Then on the other side, you have Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra is almost always listed along with Eckhart Tolle as one of America's top spiritual teachers. He defended this immaterial view, spirituality. So you have one guy who believes only a material world exists. You have another guy who believes the material world is immaterial to what actually exists, right? So you can see this is going to be an interesting debate. They're trying to explain the same data from completely different perspectives. And in this book, Deepak Chopra has to start to explain that higher consciousness has an intent for the world, right? That somehow, even though it's energy, and energy doesn't create, energy only, it moves in such a way, it doesn't create new things, right? You can have energy that would explode something, but it's not going, it takes a design and a designer to actually create something. So now he's stuck, because he knows if he talks about the intelligent design movement, people will say, aha, you're talking about God, aren't you, as a person. So he wants to try to explain higher consciousness as not being like the Christian conception of God. And here's how he phrases it, and I still don't know exactly what this means. He said, all we need is a universe that contains consciousness as an inseparable aspect of itself. So, what does it mean to say it contains consciousness as an inseparable aspect of itself? You might actually see this in your own town. In our town, a seminar was given on meditation by the followers of this man, whose name is Sant Thankar Singh, and the explanation of the seminar is this. The source of all life is God. By the way, how do we feel about that? Is that all right so far? The source of all life is God. Yes, but then it says, who manifests in the form of light and sound. So God is a force, cosmic force, not a person, manifests in the form of light and sound. So if God manifests in the form of light and sound, where do you turn to find out more about God? He goes on to say, all blessings are available from within and are ours freely for the asking. Attainment of self-knowledge and God realization is the birthright of every human being. You see? So if everything is this force and you're plugged into it, then God is actually within you. So you meditate in order to figure out what God is inside. In other words, you're meditating on this idea. But remember, God is not in this sense a person. God is this higher consciousness. The fourth main idea of the New Spiritualist or Cosmic Humanist Worldview is that higher consciousness brings the unity which solves the world's problems. This is a point not embraced by a lot of people who embrace this worldview. A lot of people stop before they get to this place. For example, a lady named Rhonda Byrne wrote a book called The Secret, which was sold by the millions, even in places like Walmart. People all over the United States, people all over the world got a copy of this book called The Secret. And in the book, she says, the universe wants you to be rich. The universe wants you to succeed. The universe wants you to be popular. The universe wants you to be famous. The universe wants you to feel an overwhelming sense of love in everything you do. So, if you tap into this higher consciousness through meditation, you will begin to get all of the things you need in the same way that you plug an electrical appliance into the source of electricity coming into your house, and all of a sudden it comes to life, fires up, and does all kinds of wonderful things for you. It's the same idea. Most people make it very personal. I remember reading an article one time. Actually, it wasn't an article, it was an audio program. And I remember that because I was sitting on my exercise bike, exercising, listening to this audio program. It was by a very famous speaker who speaks as a motivational speaker across the country and earns very large fees for giving his ideas on how people in a company can be motivated to attain greater profits. And he said, as part of this series, he said, there is a higher consciousness that if we can tap into, can guarantee us ongoing success. And the example he gave was this. He said, for example, my wife meditates on getting the parking space closest to the door when she goes to the store. And invariably, he said, she gets it. I nearly fell off the exercise bike as I was listening to this. But then I thought, it's worth a try. So I went to the store, and the whole way to the store, parking space is opening just now. The whole universe is conspiring to clear that parking space so that I can pull into it when I arrive at the store. And sure enough, the parking space closest to the door was open. It had a big handicap sign on it, so it was not going to be possible for me to park there. But you see, and I make light of it, but here's the more serious issue. The more serious issue is actually a pretty deep one. If I said, look, if I say to the speaker, I have not been able to get the parking space closest to the door. The universe has not made me rich. What's going wrong? What would he say? You've got to work harder. You've got to meditate harder. You've got to meditate better. And all of a sudden you realize this whole worldview is based on works. The key to success in life is somehow coming back to what you do, not what God does for you. But there are people who go to the next step and say, if we were all to do this together, we would be able to arrive at enlightenment that would actually change the whole world.